real estate agents, if you've ever thought about owning your own firm, you're going to want to pay attention to this conversation with Christina Ramos out of Florida, who covers quite a wide swath of the state. We're going to be talking about pros and cons of owning your own. So stay tuned. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very
This,
excited to be on your show today.
this is very cool. It was so great to meet you on phone the other day. We hit it off pretty quick. And what you've done is quite impressive. Give us an idea of what your brokerage is right now, and then we'll get into how it started.
Sure. Right now, our brokerage has about 150 or so agents, and we cover from Jacksonville down to the Florida Keys, where I guess you would say mom and pop in a lot of places. So we don't have to, deal with the outside companies of the franchise rules, which is really great. So we're able to be custom for whatever we want to do for our clients or for our agents, which I prefer. A lot of the agents that come and work for us, that's what they're looking for. And then we try to keep that family feel. That's the main thing about our company, is that we want it to be that family feel, be comfortable for our agents. It works for people that are investors, things like that. We have a lot of agents that started as investors, and they wanted to do the agent side as well. So it really worked for them because we were able to make a custom model for what they need. We also do property management, things like that. So we've got we're in a lot of pots, as they would say. We got our hands in pots.
And so tell us, how did this start? What brought you to opening your own?
So the way it started was my father started the company with actually it started with two of his friends. They were working for a big box brand, and they realized they just didn't like the model. They were very good at sales. They were, top in their companies. They realized that they had a lot of people they would train, and they were like, well, we could do this, but better, so they, like a lot of people, they got into it with a lack of knowledge. Lucky for my father, his friend, God rest his soul, he had the knowledge from owning a brokerage in another state. So he did bring some of it to the table. And but it was on my dad's side, he only had that agent knowledge, so it was a big learning curve for him. So he had brought me on originally. I was more of like a transaction coordinator and a manager. I did a lot of the HR stuff, and then I got my percentage of the company, and I moved on because I would do training. I found the laws very interesting, and I always seen that a lot of agents didn't know things, and I was like, well, I don't want to be that kind of agent. I want to know everything. I don't want to have to call up the legal hotline every time I'm not sure.
Right.
Or so every time I would get the emails about new laws, I would take the classes and learn as much as I could. I couldn't wait to get a broker's license and things like that. And over time, I just got more and more involved. And unfortunately, when my dad passed away, I had already owned the company with him. Then I reverted at that point to full owner. And I'm trying at this point to just keep the feel that he had created, where we had always had that family connection with the majority of our agents we know very well. They've been with us since the beginning, and we try to stay very close to them. We keep in touch. It's more of like a friend and family atmosphere than a lot of people don't even know what their broker or the owners even look like. We try to avoid that.
Right. So the company's been around for how long?
Since 2012.
Okay. So a lot has happened in the marketplace since 2012. A lot of different models have been created. Different companies have come into play. How has your company shifted, or if it has, in the way you're running it and the offerings you're offering to your agents?
We had to change to meet the needs of the agents out there. And obviously, there's so many new brokerages opening up that have all these different plans. So we had to really meet the needs of the different agents out there, because there was a lot of people that, we wanted to have them stay with us. Like, we love them. They become like family. So we've had to shift gears in some ways for them, and also just things that we could offer as far as certain lead programs and things like training, and to try to just keep up with everybody else. Other changes is, as you know, is with the lawsuit,
Right.
our lawsuit. So we had to make a lot of changes as far as that goes. There's a lot of agents that got scared off. So we had do a lot more education over the last year, just teaching everybody so they wouldn't be scared. There was, a lot of agents, the old dog learning new tricks. They'd hear about something that we didn't do here in this state, unless you were, like myself, I work with a lot of investors, so I'm used to buyer broker agreements.
Right.
A lot of my agents aren't. So we had to really get them comfortable with talking about the money, no, most people don't feel comfortable talking about it. So it was a lot of training and keeping up with that. Sorry, I have a dog who joined me for my show, my puppy. He's my company's mascot. So it's a lot of that. We've had to change gears for that, and then just really keeping up with the economy and keeping agents motivated through everything. We had a lot of changes with the collapse of the building in Miami and a lot of
Right.
laws.
Right.
And then we've have a particularly weird for our South Florida agents, our condo market has changed dramatically by that building collapse. So it's a lot of just rolling with the punches, educating, a lot of education, and really keeping agents to not fall into that fear. Nowadays that Google and seeing all these videos, they'll, if they're watching, depending on what they're watching, they're like, oh my gosh, it's all going to end. Where
Right.
like, one year they're thinking Zillow's taking over and they're not going to have a place in the world as an agent. Next year they're like, oh, now they don't need buyers agents. So it's really just keeping them away from the fear, keeping them educated, keeping the tools that they need so that they're, able to compete in this market.
What would you say the difference is between agents that are having their best year ever and those that are not? They're really struggling.
In any of the bad years, because even though we've owned the company since 2012, our family's been in real estate for 25 years. So we've seen, ups and downs prior. We noticed that it's really that people have a tendency to not try when they get scared. They stop the basics. And with technology, I noticed that that's really where a lot of people are like, well, we're going to do our online generation. I'm like, well, how about the normal stuff like talking to people? A lot of
It
agents just
still
don't do
works.
that. And the agents, the good ones, that's what they do. They still talk. They still do the developing of real relationships, not just relationships on the phone or with somebody you met on Facebook, but they actually face to face. They go to
Yeah.
events, they make phone
Yeah.
calls. Those are the agents that I noticed do the best.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's one gentleman I talked to, and it works.
Yeah, it's nothing
So
fancy.
cool.
I forget the name of the broker in California, and everybody's gonna come at me for that, but he's one of the ones that have the TV show. And I remember seeing an article years ago when he first started, what he did, and I still believe in it, is he was like, "I wanna get in high-end real estate." And what he did was he went to Starbucks in the areas he wanted to work in,
Right.
and he would go there every day. And even if he didn't need another coffee, if he's seen certain people, like he really studied the area and he would be like, all right, that guy owns this business. He's got a $10 million house on A
Yeah.
Street. He'd see them walk in, he'd throw away his coffee, get back online just to be next to that guy.
That's
So he
awesome.
could be like, hey, I'm so and so, I'm in real estate. But his model worked. Now besides his TV show, he's doing phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I feel like agents lose that. They lose that excitement or the fear of talking or whatever it is. And I feel like that's where it's at. If you don't
Yeah.
have relationships with them, a real relationship, they're going to fall to the next marketing that they come across their
That,
mailbox or
that's right. And they're chasing squirrels, trying to get noticed and trying to get there quickly and trying to
Mhm.
do it. I don't want to say, the easy way.
Yeah, they want that silver bullet.
Yeah.
What can I That's where the most agents broker shop or they jump brokers. They're most of the time they're doing it because they think if I leave, I'll be able to leave this company and that's what's going to fix it. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, you could go anywheres and do well. It's
Right.
just a matter of those relationships because if you go to company B and you left company A, the only difference is going to be your cards. It's not going to be your actions unless you make that change. And most
So
agents just don't want to do that.
100%. So when I talk to agents, because that's what I do, as you know, I help coach agents through that transition. And many times it's no, you're in the right place. You just need to tap into what's there, or you need a coach to figure out what you're going to do because you are clueless now. The next place you're still going to be clueless. And I don't say it quite that way, but the next place are going to have the same problems. Now there are instances for sure where the company is not supporting the agent in the way
Yeah.
supported. And that's absolute, that happens. They hit a ceiling in their capability. They've maxed out what they can do at that firm and they do need to move on. And that's where making sure they know what they need.
That's it right there.
Not chasing, oh, I'm going to get a better split.
Mhm.
That does not help somebody's business grow.
Yeah, if you don't have business, 100% of nothing is still nothing.
That's right.
That is the best conversation that I had when we were talking. I'm friends with a lot of brokers in the area, and we'll go to lunch or what have you. And I went to lunch with a friend of mine, and he said it the best to me. He's like, when you're recruiting, that's what you need to know is what does the agent want? If it's all about the split, then honestly, let them do whatever they're going to do at that point because if
Yeah.
money's their motivator and they're like, "Oh, I just need to make more." That's usually a problem
Yeah.
because you could go anywheres. There are exceptions. I get it. There's teams that will feed you and
Yeah.
great. But if money's the only motivator, that's, though that's not usually it. Most of the time if you say if forget about the money. Let's say, that's not the issue. What are you looking for? Most agents, it's, you got to find out what it is, whether it's support, then 100% company might not be for you. Or you might not want a place that does training or knowing what you need as an agent is really the key to your success. And then the other part of it is actually going out and working and not thinking that it's going to come to you. That's the biggest thing with a lot of people. They think we just write up some contracts and just that's it. And I'm like, no, we don't just knock on doors and show people. It's a lot more than that. Complacent with making a few dollars, then yeah, that'll work. But if you want to be very successful, you need to take those extra steps and treat it like a career.
It's a business. No one grow a business by saving money, right?
Exactly.
You got saving on commission is not how you build a business.
Exactly.
And too many agents say, "Oh, now I can invest the money how I see my own business, the way I want to do it." They don't even know what that means
Yeah.
in many cases, in too many cases. Some do it right. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he is putting the money back into his business, and
And
it's working for him.
it can work for some of
Occasionally.
them.
It's not the case in too many places. They don't
I was
grow.
thinking you before about that. Most of them, they'll go and they'll say, I want to open my own brokerage because I want to keep more in my pocket. But that usually doesn't work out. They open
Right.
their own brokerages and then let's say they're getting 10 grand for a commission. They don't even get to keep most of it because they're using their commission to pay the company's MLS dues, the fees, the marketing, their file storage, et cetera, et cetera. And they don't realize, oh my gosh, now most brokers, if you're there for the money, go work in real estate and do real estate.
Right.
Because brokers, it's a little different. But we should be supporting our agents and not working to support them financially, but we should be there so that they have somebody to call and
That's
do
right.
things correctly. So they have somebody support is, it's sad. There's a big lack of it in our industry. And a lot of people get into their own place. And I noticed that those are the people that end up shutting their doors. They get into it for the wrong, sorry about that.
Yeah.
And they get into it for the wrong reason. And then when they do that, then that's over.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't work.
My brokerage, when I opened it up, it was to be just like you said. I wanted to train. I wanted to have all the resources that an agent would need. I didn't want to carry a bag. I wanted to build something bigger than me.
Yeah.
And when I looked around at my peers in the marketplace where I was, the companies that were independent, the
Mhm.
broker owner was doing 30, 50, 60% of the business. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that's not what I want to build. I had nobody to
Mhm.
follow in that local. So I shuttered my doors. I shut it down. And when I joined a local firm, actually it was a regional firm, a good sized family owned firm, and my business took off. I
There you
started
go.
making money again. And the first shock was when I got to the closing table and I got my commission check. I was like, oh, I used to get 100%, right? And then after a while, I started to realize I'm not running to the bank
Yeah.
to pay my company, all the extra fees, all that stuff. I wasn't doing that. All I was doing was selling, and it was fantastic. My checks were actually the admin. This is before I had direct deposit. Was like, Joe, what's up
Mm,
with you? I got checks here from the closing table. I was making
that's
money.
great.
It was wild. And
Yeah.
and it was because I had the resources and I was able to just concentrate on what I wanted because that company was built to provide what I wanted it to.
Exactly.
Right. And as an agent, I was able to grow quickly.
I
Like I
I
tripled
notice
my business in a year.
you need to be able to focus on your business
Yeah.
as a broker. You can't if you wanna stay working and be a working broker and you can't, it's very hard to do both if you're gonna be pouring your all your commissions into the company. You have to, so if when you're picking a brokerage, I feel like a lot of people, they'll go with their friends. That's a big mistake I see a lot of agents make. They'll just go with the brokerage because 'cause they're like, "Oh, well, I went to school with, let me go work." I'm like, "Oof." Usually that's the first, like, thing that I'm like, "Oh, do you even know how they're running their brokerage?" 'Cause a lot of times there's new agents. There's been times where I've told agents, "This might not be a good fit for you," because 'cause I'll find out what they're looking for. And I never, the last thing I want is to have somebody come to work with me just to be disappointed.
Right.
And I want them to come and work with me and then go out there and tell everybody how great it is.
Yeah.
So I try to get to that, what are you looking for? I know you like working with me, but you're not on the show today. So a lot of agents I notice, when they first start, they just think, "Oh, I'm just going to go and start my own brokerage or I'm going to work with my friend." And I'm like, the biggest thing is I think getting support at the beginning and training and knowledge. And there's such a big lack of that in our industry. And that's scary. And that goes on the client side too. When you're looking for an agent, a lot of people, again, they go to family. "Oh, but my neighbor's a realtor. I'm going to go to them." And it's like, "Oh, okay. I hope that works out for you,"
Right.
because, there isn't as much support there. And it's, as a broker, I know I wanted to have that ability to provide that support. Pick up the phone. That's a big thing we do. Me and my friend, we both do it with him at his brokerage. We tell that people, agents, when we're recruiting them, if you're looking for a broker, call them. Call them at 8 o'clock at night, different times. And the ones that don't answer, you should just quickly cross them off your list.
Right.
Because really, you want somebody that if you're stuck on a contract at 6 o'clock on Sunday and that person needs that offer because they're closing on, let's say, their house and like, "Oh, I really need to know what I'm doing." Well, that's what you need, as you need a supporting broker in that particular agent case. So you should find somebody that suits that, not just go to a random person because you knew them in third grade.
Right.
So that in those cases, and there are agents that don't need that. There's some agents that have phenomenal contract knowledge and they might not need support. So they might be great in one of those models where they keep, a majority of their check and they don't need to go to anybody
Sure.
but that's my big thing is like, I'll answer the phone. But most
Right.
agents don't think about all the calls that as a broker or an owner, you're going to field
It's
tons of calls.
a lot.
And if you're not prepared for that, you really should look at what your motivation is to owning your own brokerage. You might be better as a team leader, let's say, at a company that does let you keep a nice amount of your check.
Right.
Because why would you want to field calls that you don't want to field if that's not for you? And I think a lot of people get into this industry and they don't really take that inner look of saying, "Well, why am I doing this? Like, what do I enjoy?"
Right.
Like, a lot of people don't. And you might say, "Oh, you know what? I don't like trading." So maybe if you open a brokerage, you might want to hire trainers. Whatever it may be, you need to figure out your motivation and what you want out of it. We want everybody
Yeah.
coming into this to make our industry look good. We're bottled in with the salespeople and the lawyers, and a lot of people have to take that inner, find out what their motivation is, and then
Yeah.
really try to tailor what they're going to do to
And
that.
there's so much to unpack on this one. Let's go back to the agents following their friend or listening to the recruiter. They're there to represent their company,
Mhm.
and whether it's a recruiter who is got a quota
Mhm.
and they need to bring people in, or it's a friend who is hungry for the revenue share, and
There is, yeah.
there's that. So they're not sitting down and saying, "Hey, what do you actually need?" They do, and I did that. Yet I always had the solution, and it happened to be in the brokerage where I was working.
And that's fine.
Right?
That's fine,
Um,
and that does happen.
yeah, it wasn't always 100%, right? Because I had a quota,
Yeah.
and so the cool thing, like I was saying, what I do is I don't care where they go. It's all about the agent, and it's really cool to say, inexperienced agents that are in the market for 5+ years doing really well, they don't even know what their opportunities are because they saw where their friends went, or they know the broker, or and they don't take the time to say, "Okay, I need to be around these kind of people," or "I need this kind of support." And to be able to open their eyes to that and find out what their why is,
Mm,
and find out who they are. A lot of agents don't even know who they are, and they're trying to
yeah.
do their business based on somebody else's who.
Yeah.
and they're so frustrated. And it's all about unpacking all that and figuring out what I call it the 4 Ws, who they are, why they're in the business, what they actually need, and where should they be? Like, who should they be hanging around with?
Yeah.
If when agents understand that, especially if they're opening up their own firm, they they'll be doing all right. They have the foundation that they can move forward.
Exactly. And it's sad because a lot of people get complacent and they just settle, and they could be doing very well. Let's say they're making, well into six figures. But imagine if they had everything they needed, how well they could do. I mean, I've seen some huge team leaders that they're doing successful, but if they were in the right, they could be unstoppable,
Right.
and they just never explore those options because, like you said, they'll be with their friends, or they just don't even know what opportunities are out there. They haven't even thought about it. They haven't even explored that. I've seen it more times than not where people have just followed a friend. That's probably the biggest thing that I see when people come into, because we're affiliated with some real estate schools. And when we'll talk to them, like, oh, where do you notice a lot of your agents are going? And they'll usually say, like, oh, they're following their mom, or they have a friend. That is probably the biggest thing I notice.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because what works for one might not work for another. You know,
100%.
it's I've seen one, and it luckily they ended up really taking that look at themselves. They had followed their mother, but their mother was gonna do good at the company because they had a great relationship with a lender that was affiliated with that company that was giving them leads. Well,
Okay.
that wasn't gonna be that way for that agent. So when they really sat there and were like, "Oh, well, I'm not making the money that my mom's making," they realized, "Oh, well, what do I need?" They realized, "Well, I need training, but they don't give training here. My mom's busy, so she can't train me." So when they sat there and looked at all those different things, it's how they ended up meeting with me, and we were talking about what they needed, and they realized that as much as sometimes that's a painful conversation if you are close to the person,
Right.
it is business. You gotta do what's best for you. At the end of the day, we're not here just to hang our license somewhere. This is our career. So, you might make mom upset because her friend owns the company, but at the end of the day, if you're not making any money and you're getting no support and you don't even know where to start marketing yourself, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's
So
interesting too, when I've seen people follow their friends because they want to save money, they're going to put it back into their business. They go to the whatever company it is, and they're all in that same, $3 to $5 million, $2 to $5 million, and they want to put all that money back into their business.
yeah.
And then you just see this pack of people years later still doing 2 to 5 million.
Yeah.
They don't
They
grow at all because now they're surrounded themselves with people that are of that same mindset, not a growth mindset. They're a saving mindset, and they all just sit and
Yeah.
and they might be happy. That might be enough, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Yet, if they're trying to grow, they should be looking at, okay, who is way ahead of me, and how many are there that I'm going to learn from? And I don't
Exactly.
want to be at the 2 to 5 forever.
No,
Not about-
you need to know what you want, and like you said, they might be happy there,
Right.
but you wanna grow. One of the coaches that I love to watch on YouTube, he has them, when you do your training, write your goals of where you wanna be, and he doesn't do it just once with them, because they change. Your goals should change. When you meet your goal of hitting 5 million, you really wanna meet the same thing the next year. So I really like that, and I feel like every agent should keep up on their goals and they should grow, and the biggest thing is getting them to be uncomfortable so they can have that growth,
That's right.
and a lot of people don't like that. They don't like to be uncomfortable. That's why they don't do door knocking anymore or phone calls. I see a lot of agents very scared of phone calls. And even with their family and friends, which is so crazy to me, and they don't wanna put in that effort. They want those, that's one of the big questions I get on interviews. "Do you offer leads?" And I'm
Right.
like, "Well, if you're looking for leads, that's great as a supplement, but
Sure.
you should really, if you can't market yourself, that's not really an agent I'm looking for."
Yeah, I've been of like mind until I met this one company out in Utah where they are team oriented. They're the number one Zillow company. They're crushing it because they have the systems in place and they produce. They're just out producing. and they don't have to worry about anything else except producing. The challenge is they're not
Okay.
really building a business
Yeah.
unless they start pulling away from that clientele and that sphere of
Mhm.
influence. They're on a treadmill, and
Exactly.
there's got to be a transition at some point where that sphere of influence, that business, referral based business, becomes your
Yeah.
foundation. And if you're still doing leads, that's just continues to build that pipeline,
Yeah.
and this becomes the main, and the leads become
Yeah, if you're just
final.
sticking with leads and that's your only income, that's a problem. Because what if that company closes? Things happen, things change.
Sure.
You need to build those referrals, and as you're getting those clients, after a few years, each client should have essentially sent you some leads, and you should be keeping in touch with them, getting more and
Yeah.
more, and that should just, and then you could still get leads on top of that. I'm not saying that's bad. That's great. I've seen some. It's a shame they closed. There was a company in Orlando. They were phenomenal at feeding leads to their agents. But you know what they happened? Because I ended up getting a couple of their agents. They closed. Those agents had zero on how to get their own leads. They
Yeah.
had no idea what to do. It was
Right.
really a shame. I mean, it was a shame because I'm friends with one of them, and I watched her just give up. She really just was clueless, and she was at the point of almost retirement age anyway, and she was like, "Well, now I don't know what to do." And it happens. That's why you have to get that pipeline. A mistake I had made when I first started, and I try to tell people to not make my mistake. At the very beginning, I wasn't putting my leads in a CRM. I was having all these clients and I wasn't doing that follow-up, and I wasn't putting it in a CRM, so a couple years into it, I was juggling to try to remember people, like, with a paper calendar of, like, "Oh, let's call Jane and John, and let's call them," and it was a nightmare, so now I found myself with a new system, trying to type in things, going back to old paperwork. It was such a nightmare. So now I tell everybody, "I don't care if you think like I did, 'Oh, it's just a few leads, like, why do I have to start it?' No, start. I don't care if you have 5 customers that year. Put
Right.
them in because it adds up, and next thing you know, you're calling them, they're telling you to call their sister, and you
Yeah.
don't add their sister in, and it just snowballs till y'all are gonna be like me, where you're doing data entry, trying to juggle around and look for everybody's info, and it's a nightmare. So those people that are getting fed those leads, if they're not following up and getting their CRM, it's I hope it doesn't, because it is a shame when you lose that flow of customers and you have to work for it because it's not easy.
There's a big fear. I've interviewed and many agents who are on that lead gen hamster wheel, and there's such a fear to make a move off of that
It is.
because they feel like they're just out there naked, right?
Yeah,
'Cause what are they going to do? They're going to lose all this income, and they don't know how to do it, and
yeah,
they're paying so much money
right.
to that, and they're not building a business. One guy that we showed him the money he could make. He had a great database because he did have all these closings. He's been
Mm,
doing it for a long time. And when he made a move, he would jump from one team to another. And it was that's who he is. And for some people, it's the right thing.
yeah.
It's not it's not truly building a business.
And it's not building a brand either. I mean,
Right.
essentially that you wanna be recognizable in the field, and then there's some that don't they move around so much, and I can't even count how many times people have left, teams and switched around, and the customer goes to the brokerage because that's the name they see on their closing statement,
Yeah.
and because that agent never followed up, they only knew they closed with XYZ. They didn't know the
Right.
agent. Them not knowing the agent, well, that tells me the agent doesn't have a CRM, for one, because they would have been following up. And it's a shame because that's your business. So
Yeah.
if you're doing it on the one or two that I know, I've caught a call because they just happen to recognize the company name. Well, imagine how many other people. And luckily for most, like, I'm different than a lot of other agents out there. When I see somebody calls my brokerage and they're like, "Oh, I don't know, I had a deal," I'll look it up. I am not out. If they were happy with that person, I don't want somebody else's client.
Right.
Like, I usually will try to dig into it, even if sometimes it's not even my company, because there's other companies that have similar name. I'll go a step further and try to find that person for them because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And So I try, especially if they're happy. Why would you want to do that to them? So, but a lot of times that won't happen. So branding yourself is so important and being consistent with trying to talk to them. Most of my business is now it's just referral business. I work with people that have been referred to me. I don't really, for myself, all the new leads I get, it generally goes to my agents. I just like to work with family, friends, referrals, and then everything else new I'll give to my agents. But I still put myself out there. I still brand.
Yeah.
I reach out to my people, and a lot of them now are friends. There's some of them I've done like 7, 8, 9, 10 deals with, and they've become like close. I've been invited to weddings, and they've become buddies.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be because it's a relationship. It's a relationship business. And now, if you've done well in the professional sense and you've become a friend, they're going to go to you forever.
Yeah.
And
True.
that's how it should be.
And you mentioned branding. It's an overused term. I actually had a conversation this morning with an agent. I said, are you working on building your brand? She goes, oh yeah, I have a logo. It's not a brand.
Yeah,
That's a logo. It's so much more involved than that. It's going back to who you are, why you're in the business, who do you want to work with, and then sculpting your brand to attract that and to achieve that. And it's way more than a logo. It's
exactly.
way more than a logo. We promised at the beginning to look at people that are opening their own business and their own brokerage. Let's dig into that a little bit. What do you see as one of the biggest mistakes agents do when they take that leap and open up their own brand, their own brokerage?
Well, I did touch on this a little bit earlier, but I want to throw that out there is relying on your commissions to be the, financial backer for the company. Because if that is the case, I don't feel that's a good fit for you because you can obviously, if that's all you're going to be doing, then you could do that same thing somewhere else and not deal with the heartache. So I feel like that's one of
There are a lot of people that go and open their own brand, their own brokerage, and they just want to be the one person,
yeah.
and that's it. They don't want to grow. I don't understand that.
I feel like that's almost wasteful at that point. You could save a lot of liability. So I feel like why would you even put that on yourself at that point? Especially if your goal isn't to grow. And I like having that team, people to bounce off of, and also a backup. I mean, we do open houses for each other and all different things. So I couldn't imagine doing that alone.
Yeah.
I never understood why people would do that.
That was one of the biggest things that when I closed my shop, because my company was small, there were only 2 other agents at the time. I was
Mhm,
spending most of the time alone. And
mhm,
when I picked my brokerage, I looked at, okay, who am I going to be hanging around with? What do they like? And I learned so much. So many doors opened up because I was hanging around with the right people and I wasn't sitting alone anymore.
yeah.
And I was part of the realtor association and I was involved with that. And it wasn't you didn't get that same vibe, that same camaraderie and that atmosphere of learning and growing.
Mm,
Too. When someone's alone, it's hard to know their motivations when they want to do that. They just want to do it their way. Well,
mhm,
there are brokerages out there that allow you to do your business your way and for
exactly.
a lot less. What do you think their surprise is when it comes to the operations of even if they're just themselves? What do you think their biggest surprise is?
Probably expenses is a big one. They probably don't realize how much adds up. We just did our some inventory this week just because, taxes end of year. And I was just looking up things and then it got me thinking. I was like, huh, because I have a friend that's opening a brokerage and I was thinking about that. And I'm like, wow, I'm like, I don't think they add up all those little things, because let's say they're not going virtual in this scenario. If you're not going virtual, now it's a lot more stuff because they don't even think, okay, well, you got your basics. You're going to have electric, you're going to have your rent, your cam, whatever else they charge for your rental. But not only that, the basics of the Wi-Fi, the electric, da 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 da. People just don't know the basics of running a business and they don't realize the other little things that add up. Some areas down here in Florida, you need to have, instead of just state licenses, there's a lot of county and
Wow.
town. So now
Wow.
you're paying for all these different inspections more. And I can't even tell you how many times I've had friends even call me and say, Christina, I didn't even know I needed this. And I've had friends ask me, like, hey, can we come back? I am not even equipped for this because they don't realize all that extra back, they don't, they might just be agents and they're great salespeople. And then they're like, oh, now I'm an accountant or
Tech,
they're paying accountant, but they have all this other stuff that they're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. What do you mean I have to do an escrow report every month? It's not just me printing out my bank statement. They find out all of the paperwork they have to keep and all this other stuff. And they're like, ooh,
right? No,
printer, all that stuff is expensive.
in the
And
marketing, they don't.
yeah, marketing.
Marketing's way more expensive when you're a solo
Oh,
because
yeah.
you don't have the company helping you out with that. You have right. You have to create your own technology and
Yeah.
staying top of that. And you're not just figure out what you want to use. You got to fix it yourself when
Yeah.
something goes sideways.
Well, that's another
Right?
thing. You're who do you go to for
Right.
everything? And a lot of people forget. Now you're that person. You're gonna
Right.
go. So if it's just you're my dog's telling you how to market, get attention, scream your name out there. So they don't realize all those little things that they're adding up.
That's
We
right.
like to do a lot of fundraisers and giving back. So now that's expensive and just little things that let's say just furnishing their offices. There's so many people I've
Oh
seen
yeah.
fall flat on their face just because of every little thing. They just get discouraged because they're like, "Oh, now I have to pay for this and I have to join this, and then if I join this council, it's money." And next thing you know, they're like, "Wow, I didn't realize all the back end." And then, you're paying for all these file systems and I think that's a big thing that if you didn't know, like I was very, very lucky. I was taught that first.
Right.
'Cause if I didn't know, it would definitely be scary at that point. Because now you'd get into it and find out all these other non-real estate items that you have to do. It's quite a bit, and if, you're saying that, like, a one person that's why the one-person ones I truly don't get because it's all that extra, but we could go on the flip side. Let's say it's multiple people.
Yeah.
Now, if you truly enjoy selling and doing your own real estate, well, then you better hire somebody
Yeah.
because you have to have staff. If you don't have any staff, you can't truly be a good, unless are some exceptions. So don't, get me on that one. But to be a good broker, you want to know what's going on with all your agents.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of contracts to look at, and
Right.
if you have nobody there to be those second set of eyes, I mean, it's just a lot of work. What if you get busy? There are so many times where, oh my gosh, if I was not lucky enough to have some really great staff to help me, there's no way I'd have the time to look through everyone's contracts and find out things that might have to go through and deal with if I happen to have a busy month and I had at least 10 things going through on listings and I had
Right.
a bunch in contract. Now I'm running around to all my inspections and things. Well, how am I going to be a support to my agent?
Yeah, the contracts, it's their personal problems. It's their
Yeah.
business problem.
Oh, yeah.
It piles up
It
pretty quick.
does. And there's so much to it. I mean, I could go on for hours on the stuff that is behind the scenes in owning a brokerage that people don't think of.
Yeah,
Even just basic, because I have a background in accounting. So, a lot of people don't even know how to bookkeep properly.
right,
That is something that most brokerages don't offer to their agents. I do offer that to my agents just because of my background. I help them at least get set up and explain to them the benefits of doing different types of setups with their company and how to keep track of everything. Because most of them don't even know. They did find out a little bit during COVID when they were doing SBA loans, and all of a sudden they were asked for things like their balance sheets and profit loss. And they were like, "Can I have yours?" I'm like, I'm not applying for a loan, that's you.
right,
And they were like, "Oh, I was supposed to have these?" Yeah, yeah, you're a business. And a lot of them didn't know that
yeah,
because we're not taught that in real estate school. Let's
at
face it.
all.
They just teach you, your laws and things like that. A lot of it's learned after. And that's huge. It's a huge part of being a broker owner that most people just have no idea what they dove into.
We've spoken about the time, the money, the lack of knowledge. What is a good reason for somebody
Oh,
to open up a
all right.
brokerage?
One of my favorite things is I'm able to be able to do whatever I want, but in the sense of pricing, I don't have to go to anybody and say, I want to do a flat fee listing, or I want to do this, or I could do whatever I want.
Right.
And I love that. I could tailor anything to my clients. I could tailor it to my agents. I have, I have programs where I have, like I said earlier, I have investor agents. So I have different things where I have programs for them because they're not working really in agent capacity with clients, just doing it for themselves. I'm able to do all of these wonderful programs. And if I was, obviously, if I was working as a team lead somewheres, I don't have that power scenario. And I love that I can also, I could set my own hours. That's amazing. I decide when my floor time is, which is a big part of being a real estate agent in general. I like that I have control of the branding, the marketing, all of that. That's probably the best part about it. I love training because I can make sure the people I work with know what they're doing. And I can make sure that people I work with have integrity because I'm the one hiring them. I really love that.
If you put selling and your business, running the business owner, which one weighs more in your eyes? Which one's
I love the owning the business more. That's why I stopped taking new leads that weren't referrals. I love training. If I could get paid just to field phone calls though and help other agents, that's my passion. I guess I'd be better as a coach. That's where I should probably go further into because I love it. I'm passionate about the laws. I love contract. I love all of it.
what's your day look like when you end the day and you actually have more energy, you're more excited at the end of the day than you were at the beginning?
Usually, I'm always looking up things. I'm a research addict. I love looking up everything. So I'm constantly, if I finally have a minute, I'm looking up like anything going on, in the real estate world. Is there new things that came out? Is there new laws upcoming? What new laws are going to be passed? I'm crazy. I'll read something. I don't care if it's 1,000 pages. I like to.
So that's a great day for you?
That weird? I'm a knowledge person. I will tell you a little bit about myself. I've actually gone to school. Like, if I can get paid to go to school, that would be another thing I would do. I've gone to school. I've got 3 college degrees, but I've also gone to school so many other times just for licenses and certificates for fun.
Right.
I'm
Okay.
weird. I love that stuff. So that's probably why I like teaching agents. I really do. I like sharing that knowledge. I enjoy it a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
That would be my next venture. At some point, we got to figure out how this is going to work. I'm putting some things out there. I would like to get into some capacity of government in the real estate realm
Well,
just because I feel there's a lot out there that could be worked on. And I have a lot of knowledge in that. I do a lot of research and I have a lot of passion there.
that's one thing I want to. With this is going really long, which is fantastic because it's a great conversation. There are a lot of independent companies out there that are now joining cloud-based firms. What do you see are the pros and cons of that?
Well, the loss of the personal touch, if you lose your staple in your community, your place. That's it's almost nostalgic and sad to me when people stop getting that brick and mortar.
Right.
I like to think of
Well,
this
you could keep your
memory.
brick and mortar. You could keep your brick and mortar. You can run your
Yeah,
business as you are.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
now it's under another umbrella. And your
yeah.
brand doesn't change. It's
Control.
just powered by
That. I'm not so against that. I do think from a broker standpoint, the issue is worrying about what your agents will do.
right.
Some of them might not like that.
Yeah.
'Cause most of us, if we're a boutique firm, most of our agents are into it for that reason. So that's a little tricky from a broker's point of view,
Yeah.
like getting your agents to onboard somewhere else. We have combined with other companies that I've brought in and I know it's tricky to get agents to move over.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, agents get very uncomfortable with change. Even if it's something so small with that powered by in the end and having to get new cards, that makes agents like, ooh, and sometimes that's enough where you might lose people.
Yes.
So if you're a broker considering that, that's very scary and be prepared. The numbers are very low on transitions. Like a lot of agents don't go over with them. So I do like it. That was the negative part of it. But for the pros on it, I do like it in the sense of the expenses. Like I said earlier, there is a nice lift of certain expenses off of you and certain liabilities. As somebody that has seen what claims go, like we've had agents we've had to let go in the past where we've had to defend them in court, and it's not fun. I do understand the benefits of not having to do that. So if you could go under, if you can be powered by, so you have to weigh that out in every scenario. It might work. If you're a broker that has only a few people, I don't see why you wouldn't want to do that.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to me when they do a small brokerage like that. If you, especially if it's a cloud-based one that is still giving what you want with your team, then I'm like, why wouldn't you get rid of your liability if there's 5 of you?
That's right.
That's silly to me. But when you're larger to the point like where somebody in my case where we're not only 5, and when you get into 100 or better, I think it's a little trickier because now you have to worry about transitioning, and then a lot of agents don't like it.
Right.
But I would definitely recommend. I have friends that I don't understand why they're not doing it that way. I'm like, save the money, forget the liability. Go,
That's right.
yeah. It's
And then and also it goes back to the W, the where. It puts you in touch with agents and teams and others that, if it's the right brokerage, that are thriving, and you're gonna learn from them, and you're
yeah.
gonna grow with them.
And I believe in all of us working together in this industry. I like having relationships with agents in all different brokerages. I don't like that sports team approach where we're all like head to head.
Yeah.
I don't like that. I
There are
feel
some
all
companies that are
friendly.
so protective over their agents, they don't let them out of their bubble. And there's such a wider world out there,
Yeah.
and to learn from other people and see the way others are doing things and other companies are working. They get this one view of the world, and
Yeah.
and the agents don't know it.
I
They're in a
think
bubble and they don't even know it.
there's a great saying, I believe it was Ford Motor Company, that says to train your employees, treat them good enough that they don't want to.
That's right.
And I feel like that's what I try to do. And you're still not, it's not going to work. Let's face it, agents are probably, they're always looking for that silver bullet. They
Right.
just, if business like this year, as business is slow, it is probably the easiest year to recruit because of that reason. And it's sad because it's not recruiting. They're not leaving their other company for the right reasons
That's
because
right. They're blaming the company instead of themselves.
yeah, exactly. But, it's the inevitable. It's
Yeah.
the inevitable. You could just train them well, but keeping them in that bubble is always so silly to me. I'm
Yeah.
very honest with agents. I've had many agents that I'll tell them if I feel I can't give them the training they need, I'll tell them, like, "You are always welcome here, and I'm not kicking you out, but I feel XYZ would be a great fit for you, because of this." And sometimes they're like, "Yeah, but I don't wanna leave," and that's fine too, but I try to be very transparent in that way because I never want somebody to be unhappy or
Yeah.
to not get everything they need.
Oh, it's yeah, if somebody's in your I don't get this. If somebody if somebody wants to leave your firm,
Yeah.
open the door.
Yeah.
Don't leave them in there because they're poison. Or just
Mhm.
the other day, somebody was about to leave, and the broker made this incredible deal that she couldn't refuse, even though and she stayed.
Yeah.
So what's that say about the value of that company?
Yeah.
Right? If it's just like an agent that's dropping their commission because they want the deal, they're willing to they don't feel like they're bringing the value. It's the
Yeah.
value. If that agent, if that broker has to make a deal that's can't be beat,
Yeah.
then they're not giving that person value to begin with, and the
Exactly.
agent should be insulted,
Yeah.
not grateful, right?
It's very
And
true.
so, all right, we this has been fantastic conversation, Christina.
We could
I knew
talk
it would be.
forever. I love real estate.
I know it would be when we talked on the phone. We got to get on the show.
Love this business.
And so, one last question: what would your dad think of where you are right now with the business?
Oh, that's a tough one 'cause I think about that daily. I think he would probably, you know, tell me to not be so hard on myself, but at the same time, I think the market right now, my dad was always a numbers man. He would be, like, sitting there, he was a saver, and that was always where me and him differed. I was more of the, "No, this is when we gotta attack and do this and that." So he would right now, I think he would be like, "All right, we gotta buckle up and save and wait until, middle of next year." when things start changing. So we're different in that way, but he would also tell me, to, just relax, stop being so hard on yourself. You're doing a good job.
That's great. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Christina. Viewers, please subscribe. We have phenomenal guests like Christina on weekly. So subscribe, stay tuned, be your best, have fun.
Have a good